Rebecca Livingston, but do you know the name of the man who came up with the concept of Anzac Day? Who came up with the concept of how it is observed around the world, the last post, the minute's silence, even the date, April 25. The descendants of the architect of Anzac Day are in Brisbane today. In fact, right now, in studio at ABC Radio Brisbane, David Ratcliffe is the great-nephew of Canon David Garland, who 100 years ago laid out how Anzac Day should be observed around the world. David, good morning and welcome to Brisbane.
Thank you, Becky.
Who was your great-uncle?
My great-uncle, David Garland, was born in Ireland and moved into Australia in 1886. And he was originally in a law firm, but became a priest by the meeting up with other powerful priests in the area. And he worked across Australia, particularly worked with the military, and he had a love for the people of Brisbane. He worked here for 40 years of his life, until the day he died, which was 80 years ago yesterday.
So he was a war chaplain who worked at Enoggera Barracks in 1915, in the Middle East in 1917, 1918. When did he decide that April 25 should be Anzac Day?
Well, he designed the commemoration of it, and that commemoration has stayed very much the same throughout. He didn't decide the date of the 25th of April because that was decided for him in the tragic way that it remembered the date of the Battle of Gallipoli and the large number of Australian and other soldiers from the Commonwealth who died in that tragic day. So the 25th of April decides itself, but he designed the commemoration for it, intended to be not particularly connected to, not over-connected with religion, but available to everybody, a commemoration for everybody. And he designed several features of it which have remained. For example, the minute's silence, which has become a feature of remembrance celebrations or commemorations across the whole world.
So was the minute's silence first observed on Anzac Day?
As far as I understand it, that's the case, yeah.
And Remembrance Day silence followed that?
Well, yes, Remembrance Day in the United Kingdom certainly contains that same element. His design of that commemoration was thought so good that even before the end of 1916, it was redone within Westminster Abbey in presence of the King. So it was immediately taken on as being the way in which Australia, New Zealand and across the world would commemorate that dreadful day.
Extraordinary. This is a man's name that everyone should know, Canon David Garland, who 100 years ago laid out how Anzac Day should be observed around the world solemnly, as it is now, and his great-nephew David Ratcliffe is in Brisbane today. Did your great-uncle also lobby for Anzac Day to be a public holiday?
He was the secretary of the first Anzac Day Commemoration Committee. I hope I've got that name right, but that was what its job was to do. And that was the first in Australia. They led the way in Australia. Brisbane led the way in Australia in terms of commemoration of that day.
What about the last post and the reading of the ode?
I don't know about those things. They're not things that perhaps have well, the last post is different because that's very much more a military, continuous military piece of music, and I think predates that Anzac Day. I think it was imported into Anzac Day.
Yeah.
The ode I don't know at all. I need to find out about it.
Well, for a lot of people listening this morning, it will be a learning experience getting to know you and your great-uncle. And yeah, hopefully there's an exchange of information both ways. Where was he laid to rest?
He's in Toowong Cemetery. Yesterday was a fantastic day because it was the 80th anniversary of his death, and it was celebrated by the the renaming of an overpass across the Western Highway, named now in his name. So where the north-south cycle path and the east-west cycle path cross at Toowong, that bridge is now renamed the Canon Garland Overpass. So he's remembered there, but he's remembered in many places across Brisbane. He certainly was a very loved person in this community. So his name is present in a lot of places. He was buried in Toowong Cemetery. We had a moment at this grave yesterday. He wanted to be buried where he could, just on a slightly raised bit of ground in Toowong, where it looks down over the whole portion where all the remaining soldiers were buried, so that he could continue to look after his boys who were buried there.
That is incredibly moving. How did you find out that there was going to be a Cannon Garland overpass, and how were you invited to Brisbane?
This has happened because a large number of people, elected members and volunteer members of organisations such as the Toowong Cemetery Group and the Cannon Garland Memorial Group, have worked tirelessly to try to make this happen so that his name would be remembered in this way. As far as we understand it, it's unusual to have things named, pieces of road infrastructure named after people, and so it's a great mark of honour to him and to his work in Brisbane that it is named that.
Are there many other relatives whereabouts in the UK are you from originally?
We live in Hexham, which is in lots of Hexhams in Australia, but only one in England.
Right.
And it's very much in the north of England, close to Hadrian's Wall and therefore Scotland.
And so there are many people over there who you said, look, I'm going to Brisbane.
Oh yeah, people have been quite interested in the fact of going to Brisbane. I'm here with my daughter, and she has a week only of holiday to share in this visit. So we arrived last Sunday, going on Saturday. It's a long way for a short, but it has been so full of activity and the expression of people's love and respect for my great uncle that it's been truly moving, and will continue to be so until the moment that we take off.
I'm so pleased as well that you will also squeeze in a little bit of time. Are you going to the cricket after this?
We are, yes. What a day. The first day of the Sheffield Shield. But we also saw the women's match on Monday when we were trying to recover from the journey. And that was just an amazing day.
Well, can I express the gratitude of many to you and your family, to your great uncle, Canon David Garland, and what a privilege to finally have something permanently in the city to mark his contribution to Anzac Day and how it is now observed around the world.
Can I thank you and all the people of Brisbane for the warmth of the welcome and the interest you've shown in it. It's been truly moving. David
Ratcliffe, thank you so much. Off to the cricket now with his daughter. His great uncle, though, Canon David Garland. So in Toowong, that Western Freeway overpass, north, south, east, west, where it crosses, it seems like an appropriate sort of an intersection to mark the Canon Garland overpass. The man, the architect really, of the concept of Anzac Day, the minute silence, lobbied for it to be a public holiday. He wrote to people around Queensland, in Australia and New Zealand, to have them take up this sort of criteria or model for how Anzac Day is respected and observed around the world. What an extraordinary contribution.